Right, good morning everybody. It's just gone 10 o'clock, so we'll start today's meeting. Please make sure if you've got mobiles with you, please put them on mute or turn them off. And if you do get the opportunity to speak, speak clearly into the microphone so that we can all hear it, particularly those online won't hear you so well if you're not quite speaking into the microphone. I'm going to move to apologies. I know we haven't got any, Kate, but I believe, Jonathan, you want to say something about apologies? No, you don't. Sorry?
Declarations of interest.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I put it in the wrong line. Yeah, thank you. Right, minutes of the meeting of the 7th of November. Can we agree those? If I get silence, I know you've agreed. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, Jonathan.
Good morning, members. Jonathan Mair, Director of Legal and Democratic. Just an opportunity for me to say something about the item on the agenda concerning the housing strategy coming here and then to the meeting of the full council. And a number of councillors have disclosed through the Register of Interests that you own second properties in Dorset. The recommendation you're being asked to make this morning and the decision that the full council will make concerns just that, a housing strategy. It is sufficiently remote from individual councillors' interests that my firm advice is that there is no need for councillors who own second properties in Dorset and rent them out to disclose that and withdraw from the business when we get from that item. It's sufficiently remote, so that's my advice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that clarification, Jonathan. It's really helpful. So, declarations of interest? I don't hear any, so I assume there aren't. Right, move on to public participation. There isn't any today. And questions from members? There aren't any today. So we're going to go into the forward plan. It's for members to note. For members to note, there's
Got a question from Jill Haynes.
Jill.
Sorry. Councillor Jill Haynes, I have a portfolio for corporate development and transformation. Leader, I will be bringing forward a paper to Cabinet in March about our digital innovation and possible commercialisation of that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Jill. And that will obviously be added to the forward plan as it goes forward. Anybody else got a comment? Happy to accept the report as amended. Good. Let's move on to agenda item 7 now, housing strategy. I'm going to hand over to Jane Somper.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So firstly, I'd like to thank all the officers who worked to put this report together. I can't name them all because there are so many. It is in-depth, well-evidenced, and I believe, although highlights the challenges, it is also an optimistic document that throws light onto the places where Dorset Council can step into and be part of the solution, as well as the enabler of provision of a mixed tenure of homes, seeking to fill the gaps where we know they are. The strategy sets out our priorities and approach that we will take as a local authority, and working with partners to meet local housing needs and objectives. Dorset Council has statutory duties relating to housing and also has a key role in encouraging, supporting and enabling partners and other organisations to deliver good and effective housing solutions. The strategy is broad and recognises the fact that good housing is essential for a good life and enables people, families and communities to thrive. This strategy is an important guide to what we will do as a bold and ambitious housing authority, but also in laying down our objectives for others, such as registered providers of social housing and developers to deliver the setting, the tone for this to be done well for Dorset residents. It's a living document which supports effective delivery of housing outcomes over that period. We will set out delivery plans to make sure that objectives are achieved and kept under review where improvements or adaptations are improved. This strategy was developed with the community organisations and residents who contributed to our public consultation, over 2,000 responses, I believe, and elected councillors who were involved in individual and group discussion and webinars. It was also developed with assistance from Dorset Council's housing services, adult social care, children's services, planning services, as well as housing associations and health partners. Of course, the key figure whose voice runs through this document is Councillor Graham Carr-Jones, who has spent many years tirelessly working on behalf of residents with anyone who was willing to listen and able to deliver the homes and accommodation required to meet the needs of so many, forging strong relationships with registered providers, developers, builders and landlords. And I'd like to thank him for all his efforts. He has achieved a great deal and he has set a high standard of dogged determination that is very hard to follow. We all know the positive nature of secure accommodation on our physical and mental well-being, a place we call home, where we flourish, lay down roots and feel part of our neighbourhood, our village or town. When this safe place to live is lacking, the effects gradually erode our sense of stability, security and belonging, and the consequences can be devastating, leaving people feeling overwhelmed, frustrated and fearful. We have a duty to do everything we can to assist them in finding the right type of home in the right place that fulfills this most important need. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. You're going to propose the recommendation?
Yes, Chairman. I just also would need to address the report that came from, or the comments that came from Overview. The Overview Committee, this has obviously been through Overview Committee. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there. Councillor Graham Carr-Jones was there along with officers. And they made a couple of recommendations to the report, but not to the strategy itself. I obviously read carefully and discussed with officers. And on the first recommendation around registered providers, I would like to actually put an alternative in, because I don't think it really addresses the issues. It's not really wide enough in terms of what we are able to do or what we might wish to do in the future moving forward. Each Section 106 opportunity is unique. So it's too constraining, really, in how we determine whether Dorset Council should intervene without knowing what those commercial details may be or not. So I have an alternative, which could I read out? Is that okay? So the additional sentence would be, this is to maximise the delivery of new affordable housing and to make the best use of the development capacity, expertise and funding capacity with registered providers.
Okay.
So if, oh, thank you. So that would be a change that I think would be acceptable and would cover that. Also, I think it's to understand that this is going to be about the delivery plan, and so how what is in this strategy is going to be delivered for the people of Dorset.
Okay, thank you very much, Jane.
Oh, if I can now hand over to Andrew Billany, who's got a few slides to share.
Thank you, Jane. 1 second and I'll share my screen. I will try to be brief because we've gone through similar slides at the overview committee, but we thought it was worth just giving you the summary of where we are with the housing strategy that's summarised in the paper, because as you'll appreciate, it's a very detailed exercise, and as Jane has said, over 2,000 responses and a pretty comprehensive piece of work. What it is, just worth it, we wanted to stress this, where we are on that, setting the tone with a strong strategy to support an even stronger delivery plan. That's where we are today, what's in front of you. But the context of where we started, this is a build from existing policies that are important to the people of Dorset. So our rough sleeper and homelessness strategy, our allocations policy, for the letting of local social housing, for example, all of those are policies that this council and this chamber has approved in the last 18 months, 2 years. So this is a build, this is an overarching strategy that cuts across, sits above those existing council policies, but just as importantly, perhaps more importantly, sets the tone for the people who work with us as well. So it's not just a council to-do list, it's how we set out a strategy for others to work with. It's constructed through a whole range of engagement, internal engagement through different people within the local authority, including members. So leads in areas like children's and adult social care, around the climate and ecology approach, and every corner of the council we look to engage with. Stakeholder engagement, also important through everything from health through to registered providers, through to interested campaign groups on the various topics which are of relevance to housing. And also looking externally as well, and looking for best practice and innovation around the country and around the region, and then to take all of that package out to the public to get their views, which I'll briefly go through now. So, we said already, we looked for a broad reach through the consultation and had over 2,000 individual responses, which we're very pleased with. The vision and direction set out in the documentation and the way our approach is already set out through the council plan, we've tested with those stakeholders and the public. And it's pleasing to see that there's a very strong majority in favour of the direction of travel that we're taking as a strong, ambitious, enabling housing authority. So you see there agreement with vision and direction, and also the aims and objectives of this strategy. That vision and objective that was out to consultation is on the slide, and it's a very simple high-level one about making sure that all residents have access to affordable, suitable and secure homes where they can live and do well. And that splits in our world as a housing authority into the housing need, when people need a home, and that could be at different price points and different family circumstances, for example, or in individual circumstances, so that we deal with that level of need and fulfil our duties as a local authority. The housing supply aspects of this as well is making sure we're working with others to make so we get the right homes and delivering the new developments and new homes, as well as the existing housing that fits with what people need. Third strand of this is often not discussed enough, I would suggest, around housing standards of existing housing, and it's increasingly rising up the national profile around damp and mouldy homes, cold, overcrowded homes, etc. So that element of what our duty is as a local authority to intervene or to encourage good standards on that level. And so improving the quality and standard of existing housing as well as the new. And fourth, and this is probably our biggest statutory responsibility, making sure we prevent homelessness and prevent housing crisis, so that we're providing the right support at the right time to avoid that crisis and fundamentally prevent people being in that situation. So there's the vision. That was the vision and objective set out, and we had a thorough testing in that public consultation. This next few slides are pulling out the key themes of the responses and what the most common things that people said. Strong interest and keenness to see the right infrastructure on new developments. So making sure we don't just build, or the housing associations or developers don't just build in the wrong places where people struggle to settle because of lack of an infrastructure. So there's lots of very useful and rich comments around making sure that infrastructure is right. Everything from road improvements, school places, GP capacity. That was a strong theme. Again, the second point, again, lots of comments about new housing, about making sure that there's a strong emphasis on encouraging good design, and we have influence clearly from our planning powers, etc., to make sure we've got that right. So design of new and refurbished homes, lots of interest in getting that right, and that could just as easily be adaptation of an existing home as well, to make sure we can adapt existing homes for changing needs as well as new build. And the further strand as well is making sure that they're energy efficient and reducing environmental impact. The third key theme would probably be no surprise in this kind of consultation is people stating their views about having more social and affordable housing for rent. And that's increasingly coming through as people recognising a need at the middle of the market, people with ordinary incomes struggling to find somewhere to afford. So therefore, that links to the fourth theme. Lots of comments asking for us to look at housing beyond our statutory minimum, about looking at housing of all types, price ranges and tenures, to make sure we're meeting the needs across. And that's an example that health colleagues have contributed to, saying, can we pay attention to the needs of key workers, for example? So the employment link with housing is an increasing link that's been made. Again, something that's been discussed here a lot is about how the housing strategy responds to the impact of Airbnb, holiday lets and second homes, and concern across the population around how that sometimes leaves little for ordinary rental. Something that's come up a lot. Homelessness has been mentioned, and also the wish for people to be supported or given the opportunity to get on the first step of the home ownership ladder as well. So doing what we can do as a local authority to support affordable home ownership, whether that's first-time buyers or people who are looking to step up into a larger home. Using resources is a strong theme. Came in many forms, these comments, but it's just particularly around how we're intelligent as an authority, using our power and enabling expertise to make the right choices about land and assets that are available in the private sector as well as our own resources. And finally, the point that's been made, improving the standard of rented housing, making sure we're acting where there are comments are made about bad landlords. But in the majority of cases, landlords are good landlords, so how we help them to provide a good service to their tenants. This next slide, difficult to see, but I'll just focus on the top 5 because it's in terms of doing our analysis of the 2,000 responses. This graphic shows that top of the list, building more social and affordable housing for rent, and the infrastructure point, and also making sure we've got home ownership promoted as a priority and getting our design right, as well as homelessness. It's just flashing up the slide here of our residents said many things. So this isn't a selective choice, but it just gives you a flavour of the things that were said in the response. So making sure the theme of needing more homes was quite nuanced sometimes, and the first comment was fairly typical of a point that many people made is, yes, do affordable homes, but making sure they're environmentally sustainable with good access to allow people to be supported well in their communities. So that was a common theme that's reflected in the first two quotes. Energy efficiency, and that's a combination of people who are saying we want housing to be sustainable and energy efficient, raised a common theme of providing two benefits, saving people's fuel bills and allowing people to manage their household incomes, as well as being more effective in terms of carbon neutrality and carbon reduction. And the final point as well, again, a common theme on the more of the crisis side of the work that we do is lots of comments around making sure we provide the right kind of support early to stop homelessness and stop crisis. So the last few slides I'm putting in is really where we go next, and it's in the paper, and Jane's mentioned it. This strategy sets the tone, and people are happy to progress with it. It's to move on to the detail of a delivery plan.
Cleaning your hands, it's just accumulating down here in a pool. The stagnant fatty.
Oh, I'll carry on. So this is to move on to the delivery plan stage rapidly. And you'll recall at the September Cabinet, Housing Board was set up. So we got the early stages of the Housing Board being scoped, so that the oversight of where we go next is set, and particularly to focusing on the broader range of council priorities that this touches on. So detailed delivery plan to come, and I'm hoping if you'll consider this as an agenda item, we will probably be coming back for aspects of that delivery plan in the coming year. I'll skate through the rest. The meeting our objectives headings, the delivery plan headings, because they're in the paper, but it gives you a flavour of where we like to be going with this. So I think it fits with the themes that we've been covering. So increasing delivery, yes, but making sure they're in the right place and in the right type, and that we're using our data, our information, and our intelligence as an authority to do that properly and do that well. And making sure we're working with all the component parts of that, so Dorset landlords, resident engagement, and that we're shaping that in a way that fits the right purpose. So I'll move on to next steps for delivery. Stressing the point that we've put across in the cover paper as well as the strategy is housing delivers across council priorities. It's not just a housing department or a housing portfolio holder or director problem. It's everybody's priority and contributes to success or failure factors across our areas of responsibility. So providing a family a good home could prevent a crisis for a child. Providing a good home for somebody as they grow older could prevent a reliance on social care aspects, such as so recognising that as a delivery plan which reaches across the council priority is a key theme. And decent housing, as I think most people seem to be agreeing, is a key component of a good life for any individual or any family. But poor housing does the opposite and can tip people's lives into more challenging conditions, and that costs us money as well as time, as well as being bad outcomes for those individuals. So next steps for delivery also, given we spent the day yesterday looking at budget, delivery that is sustainable and efficient and cost effective. So delivery that has good solid income stream from grants and rents, and making sure we're dealing well with some of those cost pressures, including the housing benefit subsidy shortfall issue that we've discussed before. So delivery in a robust, sustainable fashion is also a theme. Final slide. Also, this is stressing this point that James just made about the amendment. The direction we've taken, which we've tested with the consultation, is we've been successful as an enabling housing authority, and what that means in simple terms is that we look to provide through our partners, through registered providers, and through developers and through others who can bring in money, expertise, and capacity into Dorset. So that path is also part of that delivery. So when we intervene selectively with a commercial focus, which provides best value. That's the direction of travel that's in front of you today. Performance is important, so making sure that those delivery plans continue through the performance management route, so we're performing well, and that continues the path that we're already on by, for example, bucking the national trend currently by having our temporary accommodation, numbers of people in temporary accommodation reducing, this year when virtually everywhere in the country is increasing. So I'm pleased with that, but it's to continue that lens of performing well to make sure we're providing the best outcomes for people, but keeping our costs managed. Steps forward around areas where we might need to transform, whether that's through developing our options around a housing company to intervene in the market, looking at ways to provide emergency accommodation in a way that's more cost effective than bed and breakfast, and plugging into other work around that we're looking at systems across the council so that they're fitting the bill for housing. So collecting rent, providing the kind of data that we need. So I'll end with a final slide because it's stressing the point around the theme of this strategy is broad, and it's to make sure we're maximising benefits across the council's priorities. So therefore, social care, broader accommodation needs across our needs areas, and that we're also linking into more place-based contributions and impacts, particularly climate impacts and carbon footprints, but also how our neighbourhoods and villages and towns work. So therefore, the key policy to link into is the local plan. I'll end there.
Thank you very much, Jane and Andrew. Appreciate that. Comments from non-cabinet colleagues before I open it up to the cabinet. John.
Yeah, thank you, Spencer. John Andrews from Sherborne. I turned to paragraph 2.7 in the strategy. Growth in housing supply is priority, but it's essential that delivery is not just about numbers. I think we're dictated to on that. Providing the homes which are the right site, the right tenure and the right place are also key. Who determines that? Is it somebody in Dorchester or is it somebody in the market towns? Just thought I'd ask that question. Thank you.
Got a ready answer for that? I think I know the answer, but I'm not going to speculate. Jane?
Thank you. Thanks for the question, John. It's around the data and where the needs are identified, and that's done within here, not out in the wider area or out of Dorset. I don't know if officers want to.
I mean, this is another area where we very much linked to the local plan and our planning policies as well. So it's could give you a complicated answer, but it is fundamentally what Jane said. We look at the information that we have to inform the various decisions that we make. On a local level, we do work very closely with registered providers and some developers, for example, to make sure that we're influencing them to get it right in a particular locality where there might be a need, say, for larger family homes adapted for disabled children, for example. So it's nuanced and detailed around that. How do we get them right homes in the right places, and that will often lead to a housing being tailored to provide those kind of solutions. So it's a complicated answer, but we use our powers across the council to make sure we influence this.
Anybody? Yes, David. So by the way, when you do speak, can you say who you are and which ward you represent?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Gray, Radipole Ward in Weymouth. One comment really around I'll term it eggs in one basket. I think I would support the enabling role of the council because we don't have some of those registered provider expertise. But with more and more registered providers moving over to profit registered providers, and all the indications are that more of those registered providers will need to make a profit in the future. I think there still is, within the strategy and within principal councils, a role for, I'll term it the need that falls between the cracks of being able to privately rent, being able to have social rent or social ownership through registered providers, and the areas in which registered providers don't want to play. And there are, those cracks are appearing in the market. You can see it from a strategy point of view. So I would caution the council signing up to just being an enabler. I think there has to be, we've got a Homes Dorset vehicle. At some time in the future, we may want to provide for covering some of those cracks. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And comment, Jane?
Yes, I will, and then Andrew will probably expand into the detail. Thank you. And you're right in much of what you say, and there are gaps, and we do fill some of those through the provision of temporary accommodation, which is absolutely vital, and it is not an area that our registered providers step into. It is where we need to step in, and we do. But there's more. Andrew, do you want to
Yeah,
expand?
I mean that's the main point. It's about where I suppose that's an example of where we do intervene, because, partly because the government encourages us to and gives us grants directly. I think, and in terms of the way I'd answer the question though as well is about us maintaining our, I guess in some way, that's why I use the phrase intelligence as a council, to make sure we stay alert to those gaps. If there are, for example, we're talking to a couple of medium-sized housing associations at the moment because we're worried about some of our registered provider. We want to make sure we've got enough breadth to make sure there aren't gaps that appear, just to make sure we've got that comfort that we've got enough provision across the board. We've got some very good, larger developing registered providers, but that's an example of an initiative just to make sure we're getting ahead of any gaps which may appear. There isn't a single solution to any. Most good housing authorities don't go for only one single approach. It's about us making sure we're alert to. Making sure we're planning for any areas where there may be gaps.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Yes. And for example, the very large providers, Asda, have recently announced their intention to invest 2.2 billion to build over 10,000 new homes over the next 7 years. So we need to ensure that we influence as much as we can for get them to build as many here as possible, because that's what we want. That's that enabling part, that influencing part, and that relationship part. But yes, also filling those gaps where they won't be doing that.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? We'll come back to the Cabinet. David Walsh, would like to second the recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Councillor David Walsh, portfolio holder for planning and the lead member on the local plan. And I represent Dorset on the Town and Country Planning Association's New Communities Group, where I'm an advocate for building communities, not knocking up houses. Now, I've worked very closely with Graham Carr-Jones over the years and Andrew Billany, and I'm now working very closely with Jane Somper, because as is common sense, planning and highways are hand in glove. Planning and housing must be hand in glove. It's not all about new builds, it is about existing as well. But with that existing, we can have change of use, we can have reuse. We must be working together because this is so, so important. Now, I'm so pleased to support this because with the introduction, the starting point, our vision is to ensure our residents have access to affordable, suitable, secure homes where they can live well as part of sustainable and thriving communities. Is that not a godsend to everybody? Should we not be looking to do that for every person? Nobody with any self-respect could oppose this document. This document is fantastic. It is a living document, so it will improve as it goes further. But I can only say I am so pleased to support this. And Andrew Billany is right. This is strong and ambitious, and we must be strong and ambitious for our residents. So I could go on speaking for a long, long time on this, and I'm sure you don't want me to. So I'm going to stop, but I do second and I do support this.
Thank you, David. Ray Bryan.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Councillor Ray Bryan, portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment, and ward member for St Leonard's and St Ives, that beautiful area over in the east. I thought I'd plug that. I'm going to just hone in on one objective that sort of deals with this for me, and that's the driving the delivery of homes people need and can afford to live in. This is the essential part of this document, which is why I have no hesitation whatsoever in supporting it.
Thank you, Ray. Anybody else? Byron?
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Byron Quell, Blandford Forum. Yes, I am supporting this, and I welcome it. I know I've had many conversations with Councillor Somper, and I'm glad Councillor Walsh mentioned that it's a living document, because as any strategy can develop, what's very important to me, and actually one of the fundamental reasons why I got involved in local government, is because I was a firm believer in housing, education and security, and that sort of triangle, I think no matter what area you're involved in, is so important, and it can build better futures. It's literally that simple. Teresa Levy is a big advocate for our children in Dorset, and she always talks about good, warm, stable homes for our young people, and how that can be an enabler for their futures. So this is a fantastic document coming through. There are areas that I think we could do more so, and I understand that it's a living document, and I've already spoken to Councillor Somper on some of those areas. And that's what it's all about. It's about better lives from children's services perspective. Better housing creates a better environment for our young people, and the outcomes are so much better. So again, as Councillor Walsh said, you can't argue with this. I would like to see in that organic growing of a strategy. I like variance and capacity in delivering anything, any sort of service. And I like the models in which we could maybe look into getting involved in those markets, building those houses, because sometimes some of those organizations that we go to won't build what we need. And there are times where we need to jump in. Councillor Gray mentioned that in a slightly different way about cracks. So I think this is a fantastic start, fantastic strategy. We're definitely going in the right direction. I can't wait to see where we get to eventually in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Anybody else? Andrew Parry.
Thank you. I welcome the strategy, and I've had the opportunity to live in areas, of course, which have very high restrictions on their housing. I'm thinking of the Channel Island market with their own open market and local markets, which do literally dictate where people can live. We have great freedoms in this country. But in my own West Parley ward, I observe that the affordable end of the housing market sits very much with the retired community. A retirement flat in West Parley is on the market today for £120,000. A one-bedroom flat, a flat that would be eligible to occupied by somebody who's 20, not 60, is £210,000. There's such a disparity there in an area where, of course, the average wages don't reflect the property prices when it comes to mortgages. So anything we can do to open up that market and liberate it a bit more would be really helpful.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other Cabinet member? If not, I'll just summarise, because I agree with what everybody said here. Actually, it's a well-drafted strategy. It's something that we've been aiming for a while. It's one of our Cabinet key priorities, and it is a recommendation to full council. And I hope that when it gets there, it gets the fulsome support it deserves. Any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendation in the report? In the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Now move on to agenda item 8, Dorset Shared Prosperity Fund Investment Plan. Simon Gibson.
Good morning, Councillor Simon Gibson, the portfolio holder for Levelling Up and Economic Growth. I'm delighted to be able to present the Dorset Shared Prosperity Fund Investment Plan and the Rural England Prosperity Fund Addendum. This is good news. This is just under £6.5 million worth of funding secured from the government for Dorset to be able to be spent across our communities to support both communities and our businesses. The report sets out how the council is proposing to distribute these grants and sets out the criteria for applications, both in the report and in the appendices. But the headlines are just under £2 million for the Rural Prosperity Fund and £4.4 million for the Shared Prosperity Fund. And the report in 1.1 sets out the main criteria areas that we're seeking to distribute this funding. So to our communities, to our local businesses, and then to invest in people and skills. The money needs to be spent by March 2025. We won't be doing it all in one lump, but we do want to follow today's Cabinet decision and get this money out the door as quickly as we can. So pending approval by Cabinet today, we would want to open applications before Christmas at the end of this week, and then ideally start to meet with the granting panels early in the new year so that we can get this money to our communities, to our businesses, where it can make a difference rather than sitting in the council's bank account. The report sets out, and in the appendices, how it is that we will distribute this money. It also sets out how we control the money, and it sets out how it is that we've got to this stage. So there's been good engagement with stakeholders from across the community to get to this point. But once we've had a chance to see how what sort of grants come in and to see how the fund is working, we want to come back and ideally see if there's any tweaks that we need to make. So get scrutiny to have a look at this in the spring once we've had a chance to see what works and what doesn't work. But for now, I think we've got a good way forward, and I'm hoping for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Simon. I'll seek a seconder. Laura, thank you very much. Before I open it up to the non-Cabinet members, anybody wish to comment before I come back to Cabinet? No? Did I see you indicate? Nick, did you want to speak or not? No? Okay. Well, I think this is good news. I think it was better than good news. It's excellent news. Jane, now the Cabinet. Jane?
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's quite exciting. Very exciting. Did you say that this would go through scrutiny? I just wondered what the member oversight would be on this. I think you said that. But sorry, just to clarify, if there be anything else, any other input?
Thank you very much for the question. Happy to clarify, because I think member oversight of such a large amount of money going into our communities is incredibly important. So the members of oversight to date, there is a shared prosperity board that is set up that's chaired by me as the portfolio holder. We have another meeting this Friday. In attendance, so there's a range of people. So we wanted this to go outside of just the council areas. So there's representatives and members of Parliament, the Police and Crime Commissioner, the Dorset Association of Town and Parish Councils. So it gives us a broad range of views, as well as obviously views from the business community as well. That board has an overseeing role. In the new year, when the grant applications come in, we've split them into two broad themes: business grants and community grants. I will chair the panel with some granting experts to look at the business grants, and Councillor Laura Beddoe has kindly offered to do likewise for the community grant aspect. There is a sifting process to make sure that some of the bids that come in meet the criteria that we're agreeing today. And that's important because there does need to be a level of robustness to the system so that it's money being spent properly. And then once we see how that goes, the plan would be then to come back to scrutiny and say, here's how the first wave has gone. Are we hitting the right areas that we intend to hit? And are there any changes we need to make? But it's that reassurance that there is member oversight before, during, and then afterwards if we need to change.
Thank you for that, Simon. Anybody else? Any member of the Cabinet? Okay, does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendation in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We move on to agenda item 9, levelling up land fund acquisitions. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you very much. So, delighted to bring a second report the month after the last report on the Levelling Up Fund land acquisitions as part of the Levelling Up project in Weymouth. Those that were at Cabinet last month will have seen a lot of what's in the report this time. Very straightforward report, to the point. What we asked for permission to go away and explore last month, we're now coming back this time with firmer recommendations to be able to acquire the sites that are mentioned in the report. Obviously, there are some commercial aspects to that report, so if we want to get into specifics, we'd need to do that in exempt, but the report does try to give a summary of what it is that we're achieving. We want to bid on 2 sites on Westway Road, and crucially, I think probably to highlight at this point is alongside trying to secure those sites, it is subject to there being a satisfactory decontamination report. So it is clear that we're buying something in the full knowledge of what is on site. And as you would do with any large project like this is basically asking for the next stage of due diligence. Thank you very much.
I have a seconder for that. Jill? No, Cabinet, any colleagues wish to comment? Just caution you that if you go into any detail, we'll have to go into exempt business. If it's just a general comment, which is fine, but if you go to a detail, I'll have to go into exempt and clear the chamber.
I'll do my best not to stray. Councillor John Orrell, Melcombe Regis Ward, which is central Weymouth. Very much welcome this report. It makes perfect sense. The various bits of land you're looking to acquire are derelict and they are prime sites. Some of them will make great development opportunities, so very sensible. Also, the move to concentrate on to leave New Bond Street, which has perfectly functional buildings which have got several decades life in them, to a derelict bowling site. So that's great. I very much welcome the declared 35% affordable housing. That's very much needed. We could do with 50%, but 35% is good. The one point I'd make is that we're losing a wet weather attraction, a bowling alley, which is quite good for days like today, and we hope to see something else re-provided at one of the other development sites in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Well done. Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Orrell. I completely agree with that. I think one of the changes that we've made more recently, and we discussed it in a little bit of detail at the last meeting, was the change away from New Bond Street towards Westway. And I think, or at least I hope, that's an example of what we're trying to do with Levelling Up, is make sure that we are listening and evolving where we can. It's a long-term project, so it's about trying to make sure that when new opportunities appear, we're flexible enough to take them, or if things that were originally in the bid perhaps now don't look as attractive as they once did, we can be flexible to make sure that we're actually delivering the main things that we're trying to deliver. So rather than being so specific on one side or another, it's about saying, actually, what are we trying to do? We're trying to make sure we build new and good houses, make sure we do have the right levels of attraction across Weymouth, and make sure that investment's coming into the town. So this approach, I think, gives us a really good opportunity to do that. And I'm grateful for the local members' input in trying to shape the changes that we're making in the report.
Thank you, Simon. Anybody else? Before I come back to the Cabinet. Right, Cabinet colleagues, the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. Anybody else got a comment? Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendation, the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We now move on to agenda item 10, which is portfolio holder reports updates. Oh, it stopped, finally. Whew, we can hear everybody now. I've had a number of reports already been submitted, and they'll be published in the usual way by Kate after the meeting. But I do know that, Jill, did you want to comment on the digital innovation? You're going to send it to an overview committee?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I have announced who I am, so I'm hoping you've remembered that. But yes, we're looking to do something slightly different with the way our digital innovation team works, and potentially for that to be some sort of joint venture working outside of the council. We will be hoping to take that to an overview committee, but because of time constraints, it looks like we're going to have to ask for a separate committee in February, because we won't be ready with the business plan for the January meeting of that overview, and we need to take it to the March Cabinet in order to keep things on the move and the money in the right place. So I've spoken to the chair of that overview committee, and they are looking for dates in February. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Jill. Right, now going to agenda item 11, which is urgent items. There aren't any today. So moving swiftly on to agenda item 12, exempt business. and I need to read this out for the benefit of those that are online, that in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, to exclude the public from meetings for the business specified in the items below, because it's likely that if members of the public were present, they'll be disclosed to them of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Act, and the public interest in withholding the information outweighs the public interest in disclosing information to the public. Goodness me. Can I have a proposer, please? Seconder, Andrew, all agreed? Right, we're going to exempt. We'll just wait for a few moments for the live streaming to